Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news, a daily briefing on stand-up comedy, comedians, and the comedy industry. A sentence you'd think I've memorized by now, but I have not, but the algorithm does love it, apparently. Numbers are up. New listeners, thank you. Today is political, not because it's President's Day, just as I put the show together the same way I put the show together every day. Almost all the stories are political, so I'll try and start with a fun one. I saw this headline: deal between Jimmy Fallon and Tommy Mottola falls through. Apparently, they were going to work on a pasta sauce together. What could have possibly gone wrong? Seems that Tommy's name is in the Epstein files. Page 6 says representatives for Jimmy Fallon did not comment, nor did Tommy's spokesperson. A source familiar with the pasta sauce plans tells Page 6 nobody wants to be within 50 feet of anyone in the Epstein files. Obviously, the Epstein files are not funny, but the pasta aspect of this story is funny. Jimmy Fallon has escaped. Meanwhile, Jimmy Kimmel has proposed a new nickname for the files. Kimmel has proposed rebranding the Epstein files as the Epstein Trump files. Kimmel explained Trump wants everything to be named after him, including the Kennedy Center, Dulles International Airport, and New York's Penn Station. Jimmy said, if that's the way to keep him happy, I have another suggestion for something we could name after him, and it's big, and I think he'll like it, because it's something everybody's talking about, something that he actually, unlike almost everything else he wants named after him, deserves to be a part of, and I propose that we should think about adding his name to the Epstein files. This is hilarious. And that is the point of comedy. You can find laughter in anything. Again, get serious for a second. I write for Palace Intrigue about the British royal family, Epstein files, everything. Some of the stuff that I have clicked on, these images are in my head. I don't even want to verbalize out loud some of the things I've come across that are just horrific. So I don't make fun of the files at all. But from a comedy standpoint, what Kimmel's doing here is hilarious. The idea that a Jimmy Fallon pasta sauce deal went sideways over the files, that is kind of funny. So Kimmel said, with your cooperation and the cooperation of others, will be known as the Trump-Epstein file. See, now he's flipped it there. Has a nice ring to it. Why not put his name on the outside of the files, too? On Thursday night, Jimmy's monologue noted that he has trademarked the phrase Epstein Trump files. Kimmel explained J.D. Vance has been very weakly defending his boss on the fact that Trump's name is mentioned more than 1 million times in what are now known as the Trump-Epstein files. We're getting that trademark, but if you can spread it around, feel free. The Hollywood Reporter had a big piece titled Why MAGA-Boosting Comedy Bros Are Turning on Trump, subheading from Joe Rogan to Andrew Schulz. The bromance between right-coded comics and the president is quickly cooling off. The Hollywood Reporter reminds us, with their tens of millions of subscribers, Manosphere shows a circle of pals that includes such Trump-amenable comics as Tony Hinchcliffe, Joe Rogan, and Andrew Schulz are not a cultural footnote. That reminds me, last week, Theo Von had on 2 guests. He had on Kevin James and the United States Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. If you want to catch up on Theo Von's show, Kevin James, always a great listen, I'm sure. I digress. The Hollywood Reporter says Hinchcliffe, Rogan, Vaughn, Andrew Schulz are not a cultural footnote. They are an infrastructure map. That sentence structure there is very AI. I use a lot of AI. It's very AI there, copywriters at the Hollywood Reporter. Sidney Demetz, a fifth-year PhD student at the University of Washington who studies podcast networks and misinformation, described the medium's advantage less as a media theory than a statement of physics. Sidney says podcasts are incredibly persuasive because they induce the parasocial phenomenon and trigger a lot of feelings of intimacy and trust. Hopefully that is true. Hopefully people are walking around saying the phrase great dramatic actor Adam Sandler. Hopefully Sidney is right about this. She says the listener does not merely consume content. The listener builds a relationship after enough hours. Disagreement feels like betrayal. Right. So you're going to be sitting there. You're going to be watching Happy Gilmore 3 and you're going to be like, this sucks. Johnny Mac is right. See, that's how this works. THR writes, this is how political influence arrives disguised as personality. Rogan's show rarely sounds like ideology. It sounds like a shaggy, melancholic tenderness. A refusal to be pinned down. Schultz's show is never doctrine, but it does sound like swagger. They don't tell their audiences what to believe so much as they suggest what is acceptable to laugh at, to dismiss, to view as performative, or to regard as just the media doing its predictable thing. Skipping ahead, Vaughn's recent rupture with the administration is instructive because it's less ideological than existential. When DHS posted a deportation-themed video that used a clip of Vaughn without his consent, he objected publicly. Schultz's retreat has been much louder. Talking to Charlemagne the God on January 31st, a rattled Schultz said the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy by ICE agents in Minneapolis was his breaking point. Skipping ahead, Trump can survive contempt from newspapers. He survived it for years. What he cannot easily survive is contempt from the people who made him feel to millions of listeners like a permissible choice. The hangover is spreading, not a sudden moral awakening, but a curdling, a fatigue, a clawing sense that the joke kept going long after it stopped being funny. Now that reminds me, over the weekend I was watching the movie Die Hard. Bruce Willis, have you seen this movie? It's pretty good. I like that line where Bruce Willis says, "Welcome to the party, pal." You know, Bruce is just like frustrated that the cops aren't paying attention to him while he's screaming in the wind. I like that scene. I digress. Let me get back to comedy here. Dave Chappelle will be in Minnesota today to stand with community. Dave's at the Grand Casino Arena. Be curious to see what Dave has to say as he performs in Minnesota. From Pod News, which is a fantastic newsletter written by James Cridlin, who I'm friendly with. It covers the podcasting industry. He had an interesting report on Friday about the Trump-Epstein files and how podcasts appeared in them. Now, I haven't searched for daily comedy news in them. I hope I'm not in the Trump-Epstein files. But in some of the back and forths, some people recommended to Epstein that he listen to the Dan Bongino show. Also recommended episode 1169 of the Joe Rogan Experience. The guest, I think, on that one was Elon Musk. Also recommended Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal Podcast, specifically the episode with Jackie the Joke Man. Now, we don't know who recommended that Epstein listen to Jackie the Joke Man. That came from a redacted contact. But somebody was like, hey, check out Jackie the Joke Man. Now I'm worried because I've had Jackie the Joke Man on this show. I better not be in these things. Joe Rogan found out that he was mentioned in the files. On last Tuesday's Joe Rogan Experience, Joe said he never once considered meeting Jeffrey Epstein. Rogan's guest was Cheryl Hines. She's married to Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You may also know her from the television show Curb Your Enthusiasm. Joe told Cheryl, "I'm in the files for not going. Jeffrey Epstein was trying to meet with me." And I was like, what? Like, no thanks. Cheryl Hines asked, "Aren't you glad?" Joe said, "It's not even a possibility that it would have ever went, especially after I Googled him." I was like, what the F are you talking about? This was like 2017. One of my guests was trying to get me to meet him. I was like, are you high? Like, what the F are you talking about? Rogan added that some people get intoxicated by being in a circle of rich and powerful people, even if they don't have any ambitions of being one of those people. They just want to be around them. Yeah, that's called Los Angeles. Rogan described Epstein's networking as very clever, saying that Epstein was getting all these very powerful and very respected people together. And you'd figure like, yeah, Clinton's here. How could this be bad? You know, he's a genius. On a different episode, Rogan talked about the Epstein files and said it's crazy. The whole thing is crazy because, like, why have you protected people? He then got into some of the stuff I don't want to get into on this program. This is the stuff that's in my head that is like, yikes, yikes, yikes. Skipping ahead, referring to President Trump's claims that the Epstein files were part of a Democrat-inspired hoax, Joe Rogan said, it looks terrible for Trump when he was saying that none of this was real. This is all a hoax. This is not a hoax. Like, did you not know? Maybe he didn't know if you want to be charitable, but this is definitely not a hoax. And if you got redacted people's names and these people aren't victims, you're not protecting the victims. So what are you doing? And how come all this stuff is not released? Fun show today, John. I know. Pete Davidson, he has that television show that Netflix was calling a video podcast. Well, SAG-AFTRA has weighed in on it, and they apparently have signed an agreement with Netflix that covers the Pete Davidson show as a, quote, video podcast. After Pete's inexpensive television show was announced, SAG-AFTRA reached out to Netflix to be like, hey, well, last Thursday, the Actors Union announced that it had struck a podcast agreement. A rep for the union said in a statement to Variety, SAG-AFTRA and Netflix have executed a podcast agreement covering the Pete Davidson show. They did not say the terms. Variety says typically the union's podcast agreements have less stringent requirements than TV agreements do, whereas TV contracts require payment of residuals. Podcast contracts generally do not. In addition, TV contracts have relatively strict rules regarding production safety protocols, working hours, breaks, and travel, which are often simplified in podcast agreements. I hope Pete Davidson isn't working in an unsafe garage. Cristela Alonzo was scheduled to bring her midlife mixtape tour to the Charlene McCombs Empire Theater on April 11th. However, she has announced she is now trying to change the dates for her visit to Alamo City. Now, why does she want to change the dates? Cristela explained, a lovely follower mentioned that there was a show playing literally in the theater next door that's based on a podcast that honestly I don't want to be around. She did not mention what that show is, but everybody else assumes she's referring to the Killers of Kill Tony. That live comedy podcast is scheduled to play San Antonio on April 11th at the neighboring Majestic Theater. Cristela said the majority of my followers are Latino, and in the time that we're in right now, I don't feel comfortable having my people around a demo that includes people that support the atrocious things that are happening to my community. So I'm looking to change dates for the San Antonio show that will ensure that my people have the best time and where I don't have to cross paths backstage with anyone I don't want to. Cristela said when she booked her San Antonio date, the Kill Tony folks hadn't been confirmed. She said, had I known it was playing there, I would have picked a different day. I know some of you might not understand my motivation, but I've had a really difficult couple of months, and I don't want to put myself in a space like that. I'm rescheduling ASAP, and we'll let you all know. Thank you to those who understand, and sorry to those who won't. I just refuse to be in proximity of that world if I don't have to be. The Melbourne International Comedy Festival has launched a podcast. It is called The Callback. I have added it to my increasingly long podcast queue. There's been so much sports. There was a Super Bowl, now there's these Olympics. So I've been watching more TV than usual and less podcasts. It's also been 4 degrees out, so I haven't been out for runs or long walks with the dog. But eventually I'll get to The Callback. Hosted by beloved comedian and broadcaster Claire Hooper, The Callback dives into the defining moments that shape comedy careers. Claire said, comedians are entertaining on stage, but it's backstage where the chats get really good. Let's see what's happening in JFL Vancouver today. Now, is this a thing? I got to check in with Daily Comedy News Canadian consultant Mike Chisholm. You know how, in the United States of America, the calendar week starts with Sunday? Well, on JFL Vancouver's website, it goes from Monday to Sunday. So every time I go to do this little segment, I click on the wrong day because in my brain, Monday should be the second box. But on their website, it's the first box. I'm going to have to ask Mike about this. Looks like there's only one show tonight. Rashid Badouri, The Tale of the Syrian Dragon. That's at the review stage at 7 o'clock. If we were in Vancouver, we would go do that. And then probably have a nice meal and some beverages. Actually, I like to go to bed. We would have a nice meal and beverages at 4:45, hit the show, and be in bed by 9:30. Oh, sounds lovely. Coming up at noon Eastern today, the results of Comedy Survivor. We'll let you know who's voted off Comedy Island. As I speak to you right now, I have no idea who was sent home. Haven't looked at the Facebook page in a couple days and haven't recorded the episode. So come back at noon Eastern today for Comedy Survivor. If you would like to take part in Comedy Survivor, check out the Facebook group, Daily Comedy News Podcast Group. After 12 Eastern today, there'll be a picture of me and some comedian being voted off the island, and you can take part in the conversation there. Hey, remember that guy, Ben Bankas? He's the quote-unquote controversial comedian. This is the guy that made the jokes about people being killed by ICE agents. He was scheduled to play some sold-out shows at Kitchener's Conrad Center for the Performing Arts. The community said, no, thanks. The Conrad Center is a city-owned venue. Bankas' team has said due to overwhelming fan response, both Ben Bankas' show on March 7th had been moved to Elements Nightclub. The city of Kitchener confirmed the news, saying the event rental has been relocated. All ticket purchasers have been notified. Bankas' team issued a statement to 570 News Radio. The statement says, to the people who are calling the venue to complain and are angry over something they haven't seen, they don't need to watch or support it. The people who accuse Bankas of hate speech are sorely misinformed about the satire and humor laws in Canada, which fully cover making satirical comments about current events and other sensitive subjects. Bankas said clearly the people making these comments haven't even seen me perform a set live. Maybe we should give them a free ticket. They can see for themselves. The Waterloo Region Record has an opinion column titled, Ben Bankas is a controversial comic. If you don't like the jokes, don't go to the show. Louisa D'Amato writes, Bankas' jokes are blunt, often bigoted, and deeply hostile to progressive values and the people who hold them. He has mocked land acknowledgement and said he is glad that Renee Good, a mother and activist in Minneapolis, was shot and killed by an ICE agent. Louisa D'Amato writes, here's a sample from a recent performance captured on his social media. All these effing liberal women. I say we keep the Mexicans and send the liberal women, send them to Guatemala, see how they like it. Just drop them off in a jungle and be like, yeah, try to get back. Borders closed. I'm sure he told it in a much funnier way than I just did it. Louisa says, here's some advice. If you don't approve of Bankas coming to Kitchener, then don't go to the show. Stand outside the theater without blocking the entrance with a sign explaining why you don't think his commentary is worth listening to. Even talk to the people going in if they're open to hearing from you. Otherwise, leave them alone. And we did find out what was going on with Matt Rife and the band, the Red Clay Strays. Remember, they had hinted they were doing something with Matt Rife. Well, the Red Clay Strays on Friday dropped their newest single, If I Didn't Know You. And there's a music video, and it stars Matt Rife. Rife has praised the band, calling them music for the soul. And that is a very, very angsty daily comedy news for today. Now, I saved for tomorrow. Tomorrow will be fun. I'll tell you, in the leadoff spot, right now, I haven't written the episode yet, but right now in the leadoff spot, The first sentence right now is Adam Sandler said he once performed music on the streets of New York City after he was fired from 3 jobs. So if you're a regular listener, you know what I'm going to do. So tomorrow will be fun. I understand today was very serious. I didn't stack the deck today. That's just what the news happened to be. And that is your daily comedy news on an angsty Monday, back at noon Eastern for Comedy Survivor. Meet you here then.